In this activity, we're going to be looking at artists who use coils in their ceramic artwork. So lesson objectives are to compare and contrast 3 artists who use coils in their artwork, make observations of their artworks and describe the formal qualities, analyze how some of the elements and principles of design are used. We're not going to look at every single element and principle, and identify forms and coil building techniques used by each artist. So this is a traditional coil pot. It is constructed using different styles of coils. It's fairly vertical. You build from the bottom up and you score and slip the coils together and you end up with this vessel. It's usually very vertical and tall. But we're going to look at 3 artists who use coils in their artwork in different ways. Zhu Amu, Andrea Moon, and Claire Lindner. Our first artist is Zhu Amu. She was born in 1989. She is still alive. She was born in Taipei, Taiwan, and is currently based in Melbourne, Australia. She uses coils to construct her artworks. She's interested in the process of 3D printed ceramics and the process of biometrics, which is the imitation of models or systems of nature. She wanted to see what forms she could create by mimicking a 3D printer, by layering coils on top by hand. And they do sell 3D printers for clay. So here's a picture of her with some of her sculptures. There's another sculpture there. So in these art pieces, you can plainly see the coils that have been scored and slipped together. She doesn't blend them, they are visible. And notice her works are fairly tall. They change in width and height, and they seem to undulate. There's different lines that you can see. And notice how they're all finished with the same color. These are some more examples of Zhu Amu's artworks. So these ones have been constructed by hand by her. This is an example of a 3D printer using clay. It literally just squirts out lines of clay that are then layered on top of each other. Her coil vessels are built through stacking, folding, and pressing. Often the vessel bends and folds due to the weight of moist clay. But the process she is using is similar to 3D printed ceramics. Her artwork interprets machine methods that emphasizes the unique quirks and movements that can only be achieved by an artist's experienced hand. Right? We can see these are constructed by hand. A 3D printed clay piece would be much more exact. She is self-taught in ceramics, and she says, "My lack of formal training in ceramics emphasizes the experimentation in the self-formulated coiling process. Breakages are very common. The technique and precarious structures often lead to cracks or the entire vessel caving in." And she also created a series called Plant Tsukori. You can see an example here. So she placed a plant inside of her ceramic coil vessel. And in the absence of firmware or mechanical processes, right, because she's making these by hand, no 2 vessels can be the same. So these are some examples of her Plant Tsukori creations. They're borrowed from the Japanese concept kintsukori, where you would break a ceramic form and then glue it back together, and then you actually paint the outlines of glue using gold. But with this, the plant is bursting through the vessel. She has said, "Interestingly, my biggest challenge so far has not been technical, but rather mental. At the moment, I felt I have taken the medium, which is clay, and this particular process, which is coil building, as far as I can take it. It feels resolved to me. Making more coil pots without developing conceptually has started to feel like manufacturing." So what's interesting is she's making these vessels by hand using lots of coils. She's supposed to be kind of mimicking a 3D printer, and yet now she feels like she's just manufacturing forms. These are a few more examples. She has made some where she changes the color of the clay. Our next artist is Andrea Moon. She was born in 1980. She is still alive, and that's a picture of here with one of her coil vessels. And her coil vessels are big. I mean, look at the size of that one that she's working on. She grew up in Northwest Ohio. She started working with clay actually at the age of 13. She would work by helping clean out the studio that she would help out with. She's currently director of the Arkansas Museum of Fine Arts Museum, which is called Wingate Art School. And she holds a Bachelor's of Fine Arts in 3D Studies from Bowling Green State University, which is based in Ohio. And she also has a Master's degree of Fine Arts in Ceramics and Sculpture from Texas Tech University. So we can see some examples here. Here's a picture, here's a close-up. Notice she has a very interesting way that she uses the coils and connects them together. Most of her coiled ceramic artworks use concentric circles, which means they're just a repeating circle. Her sculptures serve as airy vessels, into which she pours her questions about self and place. She has said, "To someone else, my work may be a ceramic take on a rattan basket. It might even be a fruit bowl, but to me it's a lot more. It's a healing passage." So her decision to use coils and to keep these vessels open is a very personal choice. When a close friend of hers died, she began to think of her artwork in the context of questions like, where am I today? And what are my vulnerabilities? Each piece requires between 650 and 1,200 loops. She works in batches of 100. She coils these upside down from the vessel's top to its bottom. So she actually starts with the top of her artwork and then makes her way to the bottom. When she's used up all of her loops, she makes 100 more. Often her sketches change as the piece evolves. The process of completing a piece can take up to 4 weeks, sometimes longer. And you can really see the textures, and they almost look like a basket, but it is made out of clay. She makes all different types of forms using this method with the coils, and you can see it's a very repetitive process when she's attaching it together. She has said, "Firing to maturity is my biggest challenge." She means firing it in the kiln, because I can't control the heat and what it does to the clay. I experience warping in areas where I prefer not to have it, cracking that I didn't see until after firing. There's this happy place of temperature that is difficult to reach. So even she, who's educated about clay and ceramics and works at a museum, she still has issues, even when she's constructing with clay. Her coil pottery takes the form of figurative work, vessels, and basket forms. When she completes a form, she focuses on glazing a color palette that does not interrupt the beauty of the many connected parts, which means we can see the coils that are attached together. Most of the times, her work is monochromatic. Our third artist is Claire Lindner. She was born in 1982. She is still alive. There's a photo there, and yeah, her sculptures are also fairly large. Now, she doesn't really work with traditional coils, but she does create a lot of artworks that are rolled out into tubes. So she's not quite making coil pottery, but we could talk about it as if they're coils. Her work is really interesting. She uses color in a lot of very interesting ways, lots of interesting forms. So she lives and works in France. The ceramic sculptures are built by assembling, knotting, and twisting coil elements of soft clay. By making them support each other, they gradually become bigger and stronger sculptures. The final forms are simultaneously structure and movement, which means we can see the structural form, but there's a sense of visual movement. Her work conveys intangible elements such as air, wind, and water currents, and their transformation into static state. Because of the way you can see, these forms just seem to move around, right? They almost look like they're alive. The surface texture is very interesting as well. She doesn't just keep it smooth. It looks almost like a breathing, living object from the ocean or something flying in the wind. During a trip to Canada, in an area far from the cities and surrounded by forest, Lindner became completely immersed in a landscape made up of moss, plants, water, and roots. And this was inspired by these elements for her artistic production. So her visit to this landscape of moss, plants, water, that's what inspired these artworks. Her sculptures have a natural and soft feel. The surfaces of the clay almost appear fuzzy, mimicking the spongy texture of living specimens like fungi, sea moss, and roots. The artworks show contrasts of hard and soft to stasis and growth. It means like things look like they're stable, but then things are growing. The lively pieces also reference the relationship between biological processes and human intervention. Lindner also uses bold colors that blend from one hue to another, and to apply those color gradients, Lindner uses a spray gun to apply multiple coats of glaze, and you can see that in these examples here. Now let's think about the three artists that you learned about. Zhu Amu creates these large coil vessels by hand, mimicking a 3D printer, and she keeps them all the same color. She's very interested in the repetitive process of attaching these coils together. Andrea Moon creates lots and lots of loops of coils that do have a texture. Her work often mimics like a basket or some sort of vessel. Lots of holes in her artwork though. And Claire Langner definitely creates these coil-like pieces that use bright and bold colors. They seem to mimic things we can see in nature, in vegetables and animals and plants. Now you're going to answer this on the worksheet, so make sure you have that worksheet available for this part of the activity.